welcome back to Coach Craig Sports. Today is Thursday, so we're going to be talking about some DFS value picks. This is going to be on DraftKings. So if you guys play on a different site, just keep in mind these names. Check out their prices over on your site, whether it's FanDuel, Monkey Knife Fight, anything like that. But without further ado, we'll get started into this one for this week. Should be a pretty interesting week overall. So at quarterback, usually I do guys that are under 6,000. I got one that's above 6,000. That's Kirk Cousins, 6,100. He goes against Atlanta this week. Who's the easiest defense pretty much to stream a quarterback against? Keep in mind, though, there has been some breaking news this morning that the Atlanta Falcons had a couple of positive tests and they have shut down their facility. We'll have to see if that affects this game or not. Then I got Ryan Fitzpatrick, $5,900. He goes against the Jets this week. He looked pretty good last week against the 49ers. Jets defense has not been anything exciting this year, so he's definitely a good guy in this matchup as well. Then we got Ryan Tannehill coming at $5,900 as well. He's probably my favorite pick this week if I'm picking anybody. I'm trying to stack him and either like Jonnu Smith or A.J. Brown. Those guys won't be on this list because they're a little bit higher than what I consider value picks. But they're definitely good ones to consider this week, especially if you're going with Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback. They go against the Houston Texans this week, whose defense hasn't been that great overall. And they just gave up over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns to Gardner Minshew as well. So you can definitely have a lot worse options for $5,900. We got the real cheap guys. So we got Joe Burrow, Daniel Jones are both $5,400. Jones goes against the Washington football team. His offensive line hasn't been very good this year, and Washington's been able to get after the quarterback. So it might not be the greatest matchup in the world, but he is cheap. And then Joe Burrow's kind of the same way. They go against the Colts, who've had like the best defense in the NFL so far this year. So it's not a positive matchup, but if his line can block, he might have a chance as well. Then last but not least, we got the 2 cheap guys this week at $5,100, Kyle Allen and Joe Flacco. Flacco goes against the Dolphins defense that hasn't been too good. Doesn't have many weapons around him, though, so he's probably not somebody you really want to play. And then Kyle Allen, he goes against the Giants defense that's not very good either. He looked all right before he got injured in last week's game. So maybe he's somebody you can stack with him and like Terry McLaurin. See if it pans out for you. Then running backs. I'm looking at under 5,500. So the first one we're going to start with Myles Gaskin, 5,400. And he goes against that Jets defense as well. Jordan Howard was a healthy scratch last week. So Myles Gaskin did get the goal line work. So that's a huge thing for him. And at this price, if he gets 20 touches and the goal line work for 5,400, he could definitely be a steal on this matchup. Then we'll go down to James White coming in at 4,800. He goes against the Broncos. I think the Patriots will throw the ball to him quite a bit in this one. So he's probably somebody that's not super underpriced, but he's still definitely a value in this one, especially if Cam Newton wouldn't go for whatever reason. Looks like Cam Newton's going to be back, though, as he returns to practice today. J.D. McKissick, I talked about him last week as well. Kyle Allen, Alex Smith dumping the ball down to the running backs. Whoever's going to be the quarterback sounds like it's going to be Kyle Allen. McKissick's 4,400. He's definitely somebody that can get you like an easy 10 points for DraftKings and not cost you pretty much anything. And another similar guy to that would be Nyheim Hines. And they are going against the Bengals this week. If the Bengals can put points up on the board and kind of shut down Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines might see a little bit more work in this game through the passing game. Not too much else to say there. He comes in at 4,000, so he's definitely a value in that part. Philip Lindsay's another guy to consider. 4,300 goes against the Patriots this week. Not the greatest matchup in the world. Melvin Gordon did get a DUI. He could be facing a possible suspension. So if he's out and Lindsay's the primary back for $4,300, he's a steal. We'll just have to see how that all plays out. Maybe he's a better play next week than anything if the suspension does not happen this week. We'll talk about LaMichael Pirine and Frank Gore together. They're both $4,000 on DraftKings. One of these guys is going to get a bunch of volume. Probably end up being Frank Gore. I don't know if they're going to help you or not, but if they somehow fall into a touchdown, then for $4,000, they could definitely be, one of them could be a value. Then we'll move over to the wide receivers. So wide receivers, I'm mainly looking at guys that are under $5,000 for the value plays here. T. Higgins is the first one that comes to mind here, $4,700. Goes against the Colts defense. I think they're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit in this one. And like I said in my other video, Tyler Boyd doesn't have the best matchup in the world. T. Higgins doesn't either, but if A.J. Green's out, there's going to be opportunity there. And for $4,700, if he scores a touchdown, he's definitely worth it. Then we got Tim Patrick, $4,500. I think I talked about him last week as well. Same matchup as last week. He is the primary guy for Denver. And it looks like Noah Fant, KJ Hamler might be out again, so he's definitely got the volume there. If he scores a touchdown again, he's definitely worth it. Then Damir Bird is somebody we talked about last week. He was $3,000 last week, and this one was kind of weird. He went up to $3,500, and he didn't even play last week. This is more if Cam Newton doesn't play, because Hoyer and Stidham targeted him a little bit more than Cam Newton would. But for $3,500, he could be a value, but he's probably not a guy that's going to go out and get a touchdown. Then we'll talk about Gabriel Davis. He played on Tuesday Night Football for the Bills, $3,400. He actually played on every snap in that game. So if John Brown's out again, he's definitely somebody that's a value for $3,400. Then we got Khalif Raymond, $3,200 for Tennessee. He could be a value here if Corey Davis and Adam Humphries are unable to go, just based on volume. And then we'll get down to the $3,000 guys. And the first one I got up is Devon Duvernay. He hasn't played a lot this year, but he's starting to see a little bit more snaps, a little bit more touches. Last week he had 2 catches and a run. The run ended up being like 42 yards. So he definitely has a little bit of value for being the bare minimum. Then we have Jeff Smith for the Jets coming in at $3,000. If Brashard Perriman does not play again, Jeff Smith could definitely be a value. He played on 95 and 99% of snaps in his first 2 games this season. And he saw 11 targets last week. He only caught 3 of them. But if that number gets up a little bit, he's definitely worth it for $3,000. Then we got Darnell Mooney, $3,000 for the Bears. He's their wide receiver 2 at this point. Foles has been throwing him the ball a decent amount, but they haven't really connected. There's not quite that chemistry there yet, but maybe it gets better this week. Carolina doesn't have the greatest defensive backs in the world, so it's definitely a good opportunity for $3,000. Last but not least, we got Rashard Higgins as well, and he plays for the Browns. He's going to be their number 3 wide receiver now that Carter Hodge is on IR. He saw some pretty good run last week. He's not awful, and for $3,000, it's not the greatest matchup in the world, honestly, with the Steelers, but the Steelers did give up a touchdown to both Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham last week. They gave up like 150 yards to Travis Fulgham as well, so there is a chance that he gets some value and could help you for $3,000. Then we'll move over to tight end position. I only got a couple guys down here this week, mainly because I'm looking at guys that are relatively cheap. So first one I got up is Eric Ebron, $4,100. I know last week this didn't quite work out. They're going against the Browns, who have been awful against tight ends so far this year. If Deontay Johnson doesn't play, obviously we saw it help out Chase Claypool last week, but it could also help out Eric Ebron this week as well. Then I got Cameron Breit up next, $3,500. He benefited last week with the loss of O.J. Howard, and he wasn't awful. He's a cheap tight end. If he gets in the end zone, he could definitely pay off for you. Then after that, we got Trey Burton, comes in at $3,100 for the Colts. He's actually my start of the week in our Podcastic Network article. And for $3,100, the volume that he's been seeing is definitely worth it. If he's a guy, if he catches like 5 balls and he ends up with like 50 yards, for $3,100, that's not going to hurt you. If he finds his way in the end zone, it's definitely good. Overall, I don't think the Colts have enough weapons that Phillip Rivers trusts at this point, and they like Burton and they're trying to use him. Last but not least, we got Irv Smith Jr., $2,500. He pretty much hadn't done anything all year till last week against the Seahawks. Then I think he had 4 catches for like 62 yards. And this one, if they use him against Atlanta, he definitely has value. We saw what Robert Tonyan was able to do to Atlanta a couple of weeks ago at the tight end position. And Irv Smith Jr. is probably more athletic than Robert Tonyan if he's used in this system. But with that being said, we got to see if that game ends up happening or not. But if it does, Smith Jr. could be a good play. Then we'll move over to defenses. So actually, the cheapest defense is one of my favorite cheap defenses this week. Is the Cincinnati Bengals. And there's a very good reason for that. The Bengals' biggest weakness is probably their linebackers. Their defensive backs are all right. The Colts wide receivers aren't great. And they got Geno Atkins back now, who helps their run defense. So if they're able to stop Jonathan Taylor at all, if they can get some pressure on Phillip Rivers, there's definitely the opportunity for turnovers there. Phillip Rivers has honestly looked awful. He's a turnover machine himself. And if you get some of them turnovers for cheap, for $2,100, this is the cheapest defense you can get. And if you're guaranteed 1 or 2 turnovers, like, why wouldn't you play them? Next, we got the Jets for $2,400. They go against Miami. Similar concept here, honestly. Fitzpatrick has been known to throw an interception or two. I know the Jets defense isn't great, but you could have some value. Then on the opposite side of the ball, $2,900 for the Dolphins. The New York Jets offense is not great by any means. Adam Gase is a terrible play caller. Joe Flacco at this point is, I believe, 36 years old. Doesn't really have arm strength left anymore, and they have no real offensive weapons. So there is a chance Miami shuts them down, gets a turnover as well. Last but not least, I have the Washington football team. They go against the Giants this week. I kind of talked about this a little bit with Daniel Jones already. But the Giants line can't block. Washington's defensive line is their greatest strength. If they get pressure on Daniel Jones and force him to make turnovers, this could be a great play for Washington here at $3,300. But that's pretty much all I got to this week for DFS value picks. I know it's a little bit shorter list, honestly, but you got a couple bye weeks as well to keep in mind. So there's like 4 teams not playing now, and then some of these other guys are higher priced. There's a lot of guys that I do like this week that are higher priced as well, but you want to mix in some of these value picks with those guys to make the best team that you can possibly make. But with that being said, if you guys liked and enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It helps build the community that we are trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports. And if you're a new or current subscriber who has yet to do so, also hit that notification bell. It'll let you know every single time I post up a video. Like I said, I do about 5 videos a week and a live stream on Sunday if I'm able to. Also let me know down in the comments some of your favorite DFS picks for this week. I'll be real interested to see what you guys think. And if you need to reach out to me for any other reason at all, feel free to do it down in the comments at CoachCraigSports@gmail.com, on Twitter at CoachCraigSport, or on the Coach Craig Sports Facebook page. But with that being said, that's all I got for this video. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Hopefully you found this information useful and can use it for your DFS lineups in week 6. And with that being said, have a great rest of your day.